Hi guys, welcome back to those of you in periods 1 and 4 and 8. I appreciate the fact that you have the opportunity to do this because this is a lesson we normally would have covered on the Friday before break. Unfortunately, people were absent and the timing was short, so I chose not to do it on that day. But I wanted you to be able to get involved in this lesson because it's really important. It's the first lesson on our involvement in World War One. This lesson is a prerequisite for the ones we're going to do on the next day we meet. So period 1, if you had a chance on Monday to download or to listen to this lesson, that would be great. I hope that you did. If not, the lesson you're going to get in class on Tuesday is going to seem out of place to you. Periods 4 and 8, you really should listen to this before Wednesday's class, and then Wednesday's class will make sense to you. All right, so let's get started. We have finished with the first part of the course. We're going to be spending a little bit more time on the second part of the course. I encourage everyone to take a look at the calendar and see how the timing spreads out for the rest of the month. I've already laid out the calendar through the first or second week of February up through chapter 24. What we're going to do today is start with World War I. And the question that I'm asking today is, was America destined to become involved in World War I? If you recall, a little bit of a refresher, we had won the Spanish-American War. We became a player on the world stage, rather. You have Roosevelt getting the Nobel Peace Prize for ending the Russo-Japanese War. So America's really starting to spread its wings, so to speak, and is becoming a major player in world affairs. But once again, World War I begins in Europe, and many Americans don't want to get involved in World War I in Europe. So let's see where the world is at this time. Okay, in 1914, you have what is known as Pax Britannica. Pretty much Britain has a worldwide empire, and it is pretty ruling the world. It has the strongest navy in the world. You probably have heard the term "the sun never sets on the British Empire," and this is where it comes from. Britain has colonies all across the globe. At the same time, you do have international agreements on postage, telegraph, copyrights, et cetera, and that's really great because you're starting to see countries trying to work together, but there's still a tremendous amount of competition out there. Remember when we talked about the open door policy, we said the Europeans looked at us like we were crazy because all of a sudden we tried to get involved in China, somewhere that they had been all along. Remember, you have Germany has colonies, France has colonies, Russia has colonies, Britain has colonies. All these nations want colonies and see them as a sign of power. So when you look at the nationalism, remember we talked about nationalism in the United States really growing after we became a world power after the Spanish-American War. It's not unique to the United States. It's happening all over the place in the world. So when you stop and think about it, England's very nationalistic. And of course, they have the largest empire. Germany's nationalistic. France is nationalistic. You've got all this taking place. So imperialism plays a big role in driving the nationalism. Militarism is also something that starts to grow at this time. Countries start to develop large militaries, and they see the need for these militaries simply because they need to protect their colonies. You definitely get secret alliances taking place, and of course, all of this is going to lead to the World War I and the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand in Sarajevo, which, as you know, is the leader to World War I. So the Archduke is assassinated. Germany and Austria-Hungary decide they want to declare war on Serbia. Some of the other powers do not want to see the war taking place. And unfortunately, both sides decide they are going to go to war, and they do that. And here is the way it lays out. Now, this is really kind of important to think about when you look at this. There's two groups of powers. They're known as the Triple Entente and the Central Powers. And some of this should be a quick review for you guys from from world history from last year or 2 years ago, depending on when you took world history. You have the Triple Entente has Russia, France, and Great Britain. And these are the three countries that begin the war against the Central Powers, also known as Germany and Austria-Hungary. So when World War I begins in Europe, it is these five nations that are fighting each other. Later on, as the war gets intense, you start to see the addition of other nations. The United States comes in towards the end of the war, Japan comes in, Italy comes in on the side of the Triple Entente, and they become known as the Allies. And that is where you get the term the Allies from. The Central Powers will see Bulgaria and Turkey join the war later on also. Okay, so you've got this massive amount of nations and all the things that are taking place in at this time frame, and they are all beginning to fight this war. And let's see what the original plans of the war were. Ah, yes, the old von Schiffman Plan. Alfred von Schiffman, back in 1905, devised this wonderful plan for Germany on how there was going to be a war in Europe. Now, this is predisposed to the idea that there would be a two-front war. And most nations have a hard time fighting a two-front war. It divides your army, it divides your military, it divides your industry. You're producing twice the amount of materials, and it makes it difficult. So von Schiffman is asked by the German government to come up with a plan to fight a two-front war. And the idea behind this is he believes there will be an easy victory over France. And if you look at the map, you can see on the right side there are French fortress towns. And these French fortress towns need to be bypassed. This is the easiest route for Germany to attack France, through these towns. And it does need to be bypassed, so Germany decides it's going to go through Luxembourg and Belgium and Holland and attack France and get to Paris. It's going to do an end around, all right? And the concept here is Belgium is not going to be able to stop Germany. Holland or Luxembourg can't stop them either. So you've got these three little countries that can't stop Germany. Germany should get through them quickly. Germany believes France will fall easily. And once France falls, they can then turn their attention onto Russia. All right, so this is pretty much what's taking place in the world at this time. This is the belief system. This is what everybody thinks is going to happen. And of course, the one thing you need to remember is the best laid plans always start to fall apart once the shooting begins. So let's take a quick video look right now at Europe's introduction to war. Let's take a look at how Europe sees this process going. This video will run about almost 4 minutes, so please sit back and relax and watch the video.
In the summer of 1914, the generation that would fight the First World War was enthusiastic about doing so. Those young men who were so quick to answer their nation's call to arms have no reason to anticipate the hell ahead. In the German city of Koblenz, 12-year-old Joachim von Elbe began a diary.
August 5, 1914. The city is full of soldiers. They were singing this song, on, to fight we are born, on, to fight for the fatherland. To Kaiser Wilhelm we have sworn, to Kaiser Wilhelm we give our hand.
The optimism of the Germans was matched by their allies in Austria and by their enemies in Russia, in France, and in England.
As soon as I enlisted, I was in a crowd of other 18, 19 and 20-year-olds, and we thought it was going to be a tremendous lark to go and knock the Kaiser off his throne, you see. Everyone thought the war would be over at Christmas. And they really badly wanted to get to France, to get in the fighting.
The Germans attacked first, and very quickly they were through Belgium and into France. The romantic notion of war that so many young men carried into battle was very quickly shattered. The new weapons of war were so ferocious that by the end of the first year, French casualties alone would approach 1 million men.
Nobody in Europe expected these appalling casualties. And when they came, they were utterly crushing. The first dreadful experience was that of the victims of what was called the Massacre of the Innocents in Germany. These boys from high school or college who were given a couple of months' training and sent off to the front, and who died in tens of thousands in a few weeks. Now, nothing like that had ever happened before to any country in Europe. And moreover, this was the flower of German youth. They were the best educated young men. They were from middle-class families almost exclusively. And they had no expectation at all that this terrible thing was going to happen.
Okay, so I hope you paid attention to the end of that piece where it discusses, excuse me, where the narrator discusses the massacre of the innocents. This is an incredibly important thing to think about. You have the best trained, the best educated, the brightest people of a nation are massacred. And the question that I would ask is, what does that do to Germany? What happens? Now, you know Germany loses the war. We all got that. But my question again is, what does that do to Germany? What does it set up for after the war? Think about that. When we get to World War II, we look at the rise of Hitler and what happens to Germany in the 1920s. The question that becomes glaring out there is, what if all of these innocent people, the best and the brightest of Germany, were not killed during the war? All right, so give some thought to that. If you didn't hear it, if you didn't pay attention to it, please go back and listen to it a second time. All right, so now war has taken place. The Europeans think it's going to be a quick one. It turns out not to be. And the U.S. has an interesting reaction, okay? They do declare neutrality. Wilson does declare neutrality. Many in the U.S. see Europe as a decadent force. Wilson's looking for this. The progressives want peace. They remember the progressives are still around, even though we're not talking about them. All right. You do get people joining up the Foreign Legion. There's a lot of people that see this as a romantic adventure. People like Hemingway join the Foreign Legion. Okay. Theodore Roosevelt and Leonard Wood start preparing Americans by going to colleges and organizing men at the colleges into marching units and start to prepare them for war. Okay, remember, Roosevelt's got this concept in his head of the splendid little war. Okay, he goes back. He thinks about what takes place. Most Americans believe from the Spanish-American War that this is going to be a short peace, okay? And all of that is going to change. So what we're going to do is stop this section right now, and when you're done, when you're done, just stop it, and we'll go on to the second part, which we're going to look more about America's reaction. I've got another video piece that will show America's reaction to the war, and then we're going to talk about what it was like to be a neutral during World War I, excuse me. We're going to discuss how neutrality worked and what the difficulties of neutrality was. All right, so please stop here and you can go on to part 2.